Thanks, Saul. Hello, everybody. Saul, at the beginning of the session, cleared up a mystery. I have a very twisted mind, but when I came yesterday morning to get my badge, the first thing I saw when I walked to the desk, I don't know if anybody else, the sign behind the desk, it said, "Please note this production contains nudity." And so I have been on the edge of my seat for 2 days waiting for the nudity. I'm completely bummed here. So I realized the sign is for King Lear, not for BIF 8, right? So I'm raised a good Catholic boy, so the very thought of nudity gets me very excited. So I guess my choice is either stay tonight for King Lear or we as a group prevail upon Saul in his closing remarks to deliver on that sign. What do you say? That's what I don't know if I got if anybody saw Magic Mike this summer, but we could have a Magic Mike save a horse, ride a cowboy, whoever that song went. So anyway, it's been 2 days of amazing stories about big ideas, radical disruption, science. That sounds to me more like science fiction. I want to close things out on a much more quiet note to offer a very modest story, really a trifle relative to so much of what I've heard, but a story that I think offers lessons about a piece of the innovation agenda that's really easy to overlook. So just a little while ago, my father turned 75, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I want to do something really nice for him for his 75th birthday. If Robin Chase is here, don't get mad at me. But I called him up, I said, "Dad, I want to buy you a Cadillac." I mean, it's kind of the red-blooded American thing to do, and he'd been driving Cadillacs for 20 years. And so I said, go to the dealer, find out which model you want, negotiate over the price when you're 75. That's a fun way to spend some time. Tell me the final answer, and I'll just write the check, and off you drive. And so he was very excited, as you can imagine. He did his research. He went to the dealer. He found the perfect model he wanted. He did all the negotiating. And this was on a Friday. And just as he was about to sort of finalize things, it dawned on him, many months ago, he'd received a customer loyalty from Cadillac for $1,000 off his next purchase. And he just tucked it in his drawer because he never thought he'd be in the market for a car. So he went racing back to his house, came back to the dealer and said, "Hey, great news, I've got this customer loyalty certificate, $1,000 off." And the dealer looked at it, and this is a guy he'd been dealing with for years. The dealer looked and said, "Yeah, but the bad news is today's Friday, it actually expired at 6 p.m. Thursday. It expired less than 24 hours. And so my father said, "Well, I know, but we've been doing business together. You're going to honor it, right?" He said, "Well, I'd love to help you out, but the terms are the terms. There's not really much I can do." And this really crushed my father in this transaction. So he said, "Okay, I'm not going to do that." And he's sort of thinking about things and driving around. He decided he was going to look for a different car, not a different dealer or a different Cadillac, but a different brand. And so a week or so went by. He was driving by a Buick dealer, and he saw on the lot a Buick LaCrosse, which, unbeknownst to me, is kind of the hot car right now for the 65 and over set. I didn't know that. And so he drove the LaCrosse. First, I went in and talked to the dealer, a young guy just graduated from the University of Chicago, taking over the family business, told him the story, and the guy said, "Look, there are ways to work around that. If we agree on something, I'll honor that certificate, and GM will figure out how to make it right for me." So he drives the LaCrosse, has a wonderful experience, loves it, goes back to it, says, "I love the car, but I wish I had more time to get to know it." And he says, "No problem. Take it for the weekend, drive to Boston, go visit your son, do what you normally do, just see how it grows on you over the weekend, just bring it back Monday morning." Well, Monday morning rolls around. Unfortunately, he's not driving the car back to the Buick dealer. He's in an ambulance being raced to the hospital where he has to have emergency. Actually got one of his kidneys out. He has to have emergency. He's fine. He had to get one of his kidneys out, has emergency surgery. We're all going crazy. Late Tuesday afternoon rolls around. He's finally kind of coming to his senses, and he sort of sits up in his bed and says, "Oh my God, the Buick LaCrosse is still in my garage." And so he gets a nurse. He says, "You've got to get me a phone. I've got to call the Buick dealer." So he calls the dealer, and the dealer says, "Oh my goodness, whatever you do, don't worry about that. Leave it there for a week. Just get better." And so that's kind of cool. But what's cool is the next morning, what arrives in the hospital? But this absolutely beautiful bouquet of flowers with a hilarious note from the dealer saying, "I was just about to sick the police on you. I'm glad you called when you did, and get well soon," all that kind of stuff. Now, 3 quick questions for all you innovators. Question number 1, which car do you think my father wound up buying? If you said the Buick LaCrosse, you would be correct. Question number 2, in the world of storytelling, what story for the last 6 months do you think my father has been telling to every person he meets, every party he goes to? Love the car? Oh, you think you love the car? Let me tell you the story of the car. He's a one-man, 75-year-old social media machine. And oh, by the way, I do a weekly blog for the Harvard Business Review. I wrote this up on the blog. I got just an amazing amount of feedback. one of the senior executives at Buick, unbeknownst to me, reads the blog, saw it, gave this, certificate of excellence to the Buick dealer. He's got the blog framed on his showroom floor. And here I am at BIF talking about it. It's the best ROI on a bouquet of flowers in the history of human experience. But to me, the third question is the most interesting, which is, why is it so rare for the people we encounter in business to behave like the Buick dealer, and so common for so many of the people we encounter in business to behave like the Cadillac dealer? Why is it so hard just to be kind? And as someone who spends almost all of my time thinking about and writing about innovation, what I've come to appreciate is that in an era of so much change and turmoil, sometimes it's the small gestures of compassion and reassurance that really have the biggest impact. So we as innovators have to go back to our organizations after this great conference and say to ourselves every day, how do we make our organizations and how do we make our people more clever? But I hope we'll figure out ways to spend just as much time asking ourselves, how do we make our organizations and how do we help our people to become more kind? Now, if you can be kind and clever, that's obviously the holy grail. So I'm a big fan of a woman at the Harvard Business School by the name of Youngmi Moon. Saul, she should come next year and tell a story. She's probably one of the most popular professors at HBS right now, teaches a class on consumer marketing, but what she really thinks about and researches is what she calls the company of the future. And she gets this blend. Youngmi says companies of the future, organizations of the future, will be built around three key elements. Number one, they will offer something that is hard to come by. I think one of the things we've learned from this gathering is we are today in an age of unprecedented abundance for every field represented in this room. Your customers have more choices, more options, more messages to deal with than ever before in history. And the question for all of us as innovators is, in a world of so much abundance, what do we offer that is scarce? That is where innovation begins. Second thing she says is, organizations of the future will be built around a big idea. That should come as no surprise to all of us in this room. And the way she likes to think about it is the great companies that she studies have all made a commitment to doing the unprecedented in their field. And given the last 2 days, I think all of us can recognize that. But the third element, which is what I think we don't spend nearly enough time on, is that the company of the future will be intensely human. They will be organizations that are attuned to the complexities of the human spirit. And in a world that is being, in so many ways, reshaped by technology, what people really crave today is a renewed sense of humanity. And what she likes to say is leaders have to become the human touch within the firm. So what are you offering that is hard to come by in your field? What are you building that is truly unprecedented in your field? And how are you infusing everything you're offering and everything you're building with a genuine sense of humanity? I think as innovators, we spend lots and lots of time on the first two questions, and I'd love us to spend more time on the third. Now let me show you, I get to travel around and hang out with really cool companies, write about them and all that kind of stuff. One of my favorite companies in this book I've got out now, Practically Radical, is a company in the Pacific Northwest by the name of Umpqua Bank, named after the Umpqua Indian tribe. Lots of stuff in the Pacific Northwest named after Umpqua. And it's a really remarkable story on just this insight. So 15 years ago, a guy by the name of Ray Davis becomes CEO of Umpqua Bank. And it's this totally boring, pipsqueak community bank, 6 branches in downtown Portland, $140 million of deposits, weirdly publicly traded company, even being that tiny, market cap of $18 million. Fast forward to today, 250 branches from Napa Valley in the south to Seattle in the north, $9 billion of deposits, market cap of about $1.5 billion. So almost a 100-to-1 increase in the value of this firm over the last 15 years. And you ask yourself, how'd they do it? And they did it quite explicitly by saying to themselves, our opportunity is not necessarily to be more clever. We're not going to innovate new mortgage products, new ways to do auto loans. Our opportunity as an organization, as a group of individuals, is to be more human. And they very explicitly said, could we come up with a banking experience that appeals to all 5 human senses. The sense of sight. What can a bank look like today? And so every one of the 250 Umpqua banks looks rather different based on the neighborhood in which it resides. So I was in Seattle recently. I paid a visit to one of the new branches in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. It's kind of the bohemian, countercultural part of Kurt Cobain grew up there, kind of grunge. Sir Mix-a-Lot was there, rap. John Cage, the avant-garde composer, spent a bunch of time there. And you walk into this branch, and it's kind of an homage to that rich cultural history of the Capitol Hill neighborhood. And oh, by the way, local merchants, a different merchant every month gets to open a pop-up store inside the bank and sell there. So when I was there, it was a kid's bookstore and wonderful little pop-up store inside the bank. And every branch has what they call a community narrative meant to evoke what's going on in that community. What's a bank sound like today? Well, city to city up and down the West Coast where Umpqua is, they've got people who go out and they recruit local bands. And it's no muzak going on in the banks. They recruit local bands. They say, hey, send us your favorite tunes. We'll play that in the bank. That'll be the soundtrack of the bank in Seattle, the soundtrack of the bank in Portland, the soundtrack of the bank in Sacramento. And they've got kiosks in the bank that show the customers, here's the band, here's the song that's playing. And if you really like it, you hit a red button. The kiosk records your vote. And at the end of the year, every year around Christmas, they press physical CDs called Umpqua's Greatest Hits, and they sell to customers their favorite music over the course of the year. What's a bank smell like? I live in Boston. You walk into a bank in Boston, it's kind of the smell of fear, kind of perspiration and agitation. Everybody's worried about their mortgage, their house being underwater, whatever. It is the Pacific Northwest. I grant you, at Umpqua, it's the smell of coffee. And one of the first things you notice when you walk into the bank is by the tellers in the back are cappuccino machines. And they're not just tellers, they're baristas, and they'll very happily brew you a cup of cappuccino, a nice cup of espresso, and they'll sell you, for the bargain price of $13.50 a pound, a 1-pound bag of Umpqua blend coffee, sourced in Costa Rica, organic, fair trade, all that kind of stuff. What's a bank taste like? Every transaction at Umpqua, you're going in to make a balance inquiry, pay a bill, whatever, ends with kind of their version of the Japanese tea ceremony. And somebody comes out and presents you, literally on a silver tray from Tiffany, a couple of lovely pieces of chocolate made for Umpqua by this company called Moonstruck Chocolate. And you walk out and you've got, a cup of coffee at the taste of. And oh, by the way, the last thing which really blew me away when I was there is, in the middle of every branch is a old-fashioned silver phone, kind of like the bat phone. And you go in, you pick up the phone and dial 8, and Ray Davis, the CEO of the bank, will answer that phone. Now, who thinks, so I went in, I'm looking around and getting a tour, I dial 8, and sure, Ray Davis, I was like, holy cow, Ray, it's BillTaylor, it's just, and so when they rolled this out 10 or 12 years ago, it totally took the world by storm. Not because they were doing anything exotic in terms of the financial products, but because they so thoroughly rethought the human. Now, 5 or 6 years ago, they said, we got beautiful buildings, music, chocolate, coffee, but we closed down at 5 or 6 like every other bank. But why should we padlock the doors when we close down as a bank? Why don't we, the minute we switch off the lights as a bank, let's switch them back on and let's be community centers. So today, all these branches, after hours at night, host book clubs and civic associations and chambers of commerce meeting. And you can make reservations over the internet. They've all got a community relations officer. In downtown Portland, which is really the heart of the bank, by far the most popular clubs are what are called stitch and bitch clubs. People come in and knit and complain about their husbands or wives or whatever the case is. My wife wants us to move to Portland just so she can sign us up for the stitch and bitch club. And you ask yourself, why do they bother? I gotta say, I think to me that's when I meet remarkable people like so many of you in this room or so many one of the first questions I ask about people or organizations that are working so hard, innovating so radically is, why do they bother really? And they bother because they want to change the conversation with their customers about the role a bank can play in their lives. If all you care about is the lowest possible rate of interest on your car loan, the highest possible rate of interest on your auto loan, on your CD, they're not that bank for you. But if you want a financial services company in your life that every time you encounter them, they make you laugh, they make you smile, they surprise you, they are quite literally the only game in town. They have become a passion brand in a field that's completely devoid of passion. And they've done it because they've built their whole essence around making these human connections. It's kind of a ridiculous way in a way to end a story like this, but Mother Teresa, way back when, famously said, I'm sure we've all seen the quote, none of us can really do great things. All of us can do small things with great love. And as I really work on and think about the innovation agenda, it occurs to me that there is a real bit of genius in that statement for all of us. And so I hope we all go back to work and we keep working on our huge dreams and our radical disruptions and incredible scientific advances. But I hope we don't overlook the opportunity as innovators to look at how our organizations work and figure out ways every single day to allow our colleagues to make the small gestures of connection and compassion that really move things forward. So thanks so much, and see you next year in Providence. Thank you.